Hi everyone, just checking that you can hear me. Hi everybody, welcome to this HMCTS webinar. This is all about the probate service, and my name's Kim, so I'm just going to get us started. Just to give a few bits on housekeeping, this session's being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll drop you all a line by email when that's available with a link to the recording. Just to let you know that you can ask questions. There's a Q&A tab on your screen. Please use that to send us questions, and we'll answer those at the end of today's session. Today we're joined by Adam Lennon. He is the service owner for probate service. We also have Janine North and Melissa Davis, who look after the probate service from an operational perspective. And then we also have Stephen Burgess, who works with Adam to manage the probate service. So you have a really full panel who between them know everything there is to know about probate service. So just to let you know, we can't answer questions on specific cases. There are alternative ways to contact us about those, so we won't be handling those in today's session. But the point of today is to give you a really good overview of the service. So with that, over to Adam.
Thanks very much, Kim. Hopefully, I've mastered the art of sharing my screen.
Adam, there's a other screen over the top of the presentation, so the one that's got the black, which the slides needs to move. So.
Okay, this is going to be difficult because that means I can't see my notes for doing the presentation. Do you think somebody else could share the presentation instead, Steve? Is that okay?
Yeah, give me a sec.
Very sorry about this, everyone. We're trying a new way of doing the webinars, and clearly it's failed at the first hurdle with me. So we shouldn't rely on my intervention. Okay, I think that's it, Steve. Thanks for saving my blushes so quickly. So as Kim said, my name's Adam Lennon. So I'm a service owner in HMCTS. So I cover all family services that we deliver. So probate, divorce, financial remedy, Children Act, and adoption. And what we're here today really is to let you know how performance has been over recent months, what we're doing to make that better, both in terms of the forecast for delivery and for improvements to the service itself. So if you go to the next slide for me, Steve. So everything we talk about today is published in terms of statistics. So we have two places we do this. There is the Family Court Stats Quarterly, and that has statistics at the moment up until I think it's the end of September. And that is, they go through a rigorous sort of checking process, and that's why they take quite a while to come out, and they cover all family stats. And we have quite a lot in there in terms of waiting times, the split between stopped applications and those that are issued. We have some more up-to-date information that we publish as soon as we possibly can. So there's probably about a 6-week delay, and that goes out on HMCTS published management information. That hasn't been through quite the same rigorous checking process. There's a bit more sort of raw from our internal systems, and so it's subject to change, but largely will mirror what's in the family court stats quarterly. So we're going to use both of those sources here, but you're welcome to go back and look at that at your leisure. And we try and put everything we can in there, and are always open suggestions about what more we could put in there. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Steve. So all of you are here because you've got an interest in probate, and so you'll all be well aware that we've had a difficult few years in the probate service, and we've not been delivering the level of service that we want to for everyone. I want to put just a little bit of context around that. So the last year, 2023, we've had the highest level of receipts we've had for over 16 years. So a massive increase in the level of receipts that have come through. And that's followed on from 2 years of above average receipts before that. So we've had 3 years of above average receipts. And that's proved really difficult for us, if I'm honest, to be able to deal with that, and to get the staff number at the right level and get them trained to the right standard. What we've seen though in 2023 is, yes, we've had the highest receipt level in 16 years, but we've also had the highest grant issue level in 16 years. So I take some heart from the fact that, you know, we have increased our grant production levels and we are trying to meet the challenge. We've done that from recruiting, significantly increasing the number of staff that we've got in the service, and spending lots of time training them and making them be able to be as productive as possible. Now, you know, as I say, you're all here because you're involved in probate, and so you'll know that that has not been enough. So that has not matched the receipts that have come in, and there's a lot more for us to do. But what I want to talk you through is how the last few quarters have gone, or the few months have gone, and how we are starting to get on that road to recovery, and are really starting to see the process of that. So just to talk through where we got to. So in sort of Q3 and Q4 of 2022, we were not quite matching our receipt level. So we were slowly building an outstanding caseload that was slowly going up. But within that, we were not treating all our applications quite the same. So the vast bulk of applications were being processed really quite quickly. So we had average waiting times of 2 weeks for the majority of our applications, but we had a significant cohort, so sort of 20% of applications which went into a different pile of work to be done, and they were taking much too long. So they were taking sort of 20 odd plus weeks to be done, and in some cases much longer. So we sort of had faced a decision in 2022. Do we carry on as we are, sort of having a good overall headline waiting time figure, or do we tackle that problem, that shift in the balance of resources between the slightly complex cases and the ones which sort of whiz through the system? So what we did is we recruited over 100 new staff, and then we spent sort of the first 6 months of the year training those new staff on the new processes, but also expanding the knowledge of the staff that we already had to do those slightly different applications. And so what you can see from there is actually our grant production levels took a little bit of a hit, but not massively. But we can see in Q1 of the last year that we had such a massive increase in receipts, and that sort of carried on throughout the year. What we're seeing in this latest quarter is that we have started to significantly outstrip the receipts that are coming in, and we're starting to make some real headroad into that work. So to talk through that in a bit more detail, I've lost my train of thought. I'm just looking at my notes. I'm very sorry. We have had now sort of 3 or 4 months in a row of our applications going above the receipt levels, so quite much higher. Over 16,000 more grants have been issued than receipts that we've received. So we've still got a long way to go, and our waiting times are not where we want them to be, but we are really starting to see an impact now on the caseload that's in the system. So if you could just go to the next slide for me, Steve. So this is our timeliness measure. And as you can see there, it sort of supports what I was saying in 2022, the overall waiting times were much lower than they are now, but we had a significant number of paper applications, that top line, which weren't being dealt with. They were sort of, they don't count unless they're dealt with. And so that's the difference. What we've been doing for the last sort of 12 months is we've been focusing on those cases which have been waiting too long in the system and trying to get them out. So that therefore means our average waiting times have gone up, both on those paper applications and on the digital ones where they went into the slightly complex pile to be dealt with. What we're hoping to see now, what we should be seeing very soon, is we've sort of broken the back of those older cases. There's still some in there, so I'm not denying that everything is perfect yet, but we have broken the back of that cohort of older cases, and so we should start to see the average waiting times that we publish start to fall gradually over the next 6 months, and so overall get to a much better place with our service. So if you just go to the next slide for me, Steve. So worth saying that we have a significant difference between how long it takes to issue an application where it comes to us with no problem. So we can issue it first time, so everything's right, we can get that out the door. And the average time for those is about 7 weeks that we're doing that. So still not saying that that is where it should be, but that is significantly different to the overall waiting time, which I think is about 12.5 weeks at the moment. So we have about 30% of our cases that get stopped. So there's something wrong that means we have to ask for more information. And Steve's going to talk a little bit more about what we're trying to do to help people get those applications right first time so that we don't stop them. But essentially, when we stop an application, it means that we could have issued it. So we've done all the work to issue that application, but there's some reason why we have to ask for something else. And that obviously causes great frustration for the applicant because they think they've done everything right, and why can't we issue the grant? And for us, because we've spent, all the time that's needed to issue a grant, we've spent that on looking at it and unfortunately not being able to do that. So if you take that 30% stopped, every one of those that we get down is another grant issued out of the door. And so that's a real area of focus for us that Steve's going to talk through. But the majority of our applications aren't stopped. So you think about that. So 70% of our applications aren't stopped. They go out of the door and they are processed within 7 weeks at the moment. That will come down. We know that needs to come down from 7 weeks. That was what was at 2 weeks previously. And the more we can get in that cohort, the better for us, because it just is better for everyone involved. You can see there on the stopped applications, those are the ones that are really taking a long time, but that does include the time it takes for the applicant to come back to us. So there obviously is an inherent period of delay there, especially if we're on a paper application where we're using post or letters to get the query out and then the answer back in. So I think really what I'm stressing is we know that there is too high a waiting time for some types of application, and we are confident now that we've broken the back of the outstanding caseload that will start to gradually come down over the coming weeks and months. Just on to the next slide, Steve, which I believe is for my operational colleague. So I'll let her introduce herself. But Janine is here to talk through some of the details of what I've covered in a summary format. So over to you, Janine.
Hi, thanks, Adam. And hello everybody. Nice to be on this today. For those that don't know me, I'm Janine North. I'm the delivery director. I work in national services, and within that I cover all of the family jurisdictions, including probate and video hearings. So I'm probably going to repeat a little bit actually of what Adam's already said, but I just wanted to call out some of the highlights from an operational perspective of some of the things that we're kind of proud of achieving over the last few months since Mel and I joined the team back in June, and to give you a bit of insight between Mel and I of what our next kind of plan is to continue the good work. So as Adam said, disposals are now consistently outstripping receipts, and that's a real relief. What that means is that we are seeing our caseload dropping steadily, and you will see that as the stats are published over the next few months. You will see that confidence sort of continues to build, but it's a really sort of positive view from our perspective. We know that we're offering a speedier service for the more straightforward digital cases, as Adam has described. There's been lots of effort put in so far to focus training on bringing the entire workforce up to a basic level of knowledge, including upskilling the greater workforce to do examining of those basic cases, and that approach is working. We now have much more flexibility and resilience across that work stream. But as Adam has said, we know that the paper cases and the more complex digital cases are still taking longer. We do remain focused on looking and dealing with our oldest cases, and that has, in the sort of short medium term, sort of affected that overall sort of timeliness, but it's the right approach because it's those oldest cases that need our first attention. We need to get those through and out the system for the benefit of the user. So Mel's going to explain shortly what our plans are now to build the next level of capability over the next 3 months. There's a really ambitious sort of phase 2 of our capability plan that's sort of actually kicked off this week, and that I think that will just put us in such a stronger position in the future. What we're also going to be doing is we're really keen to collaborate with you directly to get those oldest, more complex cases resolved and through the system. And what we're currently doing is designing how we can do that in the most effective way, and some details on that are going to come out to you in the coming weeks. But we want to take a really proactive approach to looking at those oldest cases. We are working really hard to manage wider work streams, including like email management, and there's been some real success in that area recently, where we now have sort of we are managing to reach the evidence that's coming through on emails on stopped cases within a week of receipt on those, for those sort of digital cases. So those cases are no longer getting stuck in a sort of backlog of emails. We're able to react to them much quicker. And we're also, we've made some changes to the management of our Newcastle email box that will also improve that sort of speedier uploading of evidence to the case managed system ready for processing. And Steve's going to give you a bit more detail about that shortly. I suppose summary from me, there's lots of reasons to be confident that our plan is working and it's getting the right results. But I do want to say a huge thank you to you for your continued patience and understanding. I really do appreciate it. And And my commitment to you is we will get this right, and we will get that caseload down, and we will get that service improved. So I'm going to hand over to Mel now. She's going to give you a bit more detail about that capability building plan and sort of quality assurance. Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Janine. Morning, everyone. I'm Mel Davis, and I'm the Head of Operations for the Probate Service. And as Janine said, I moved over last June, so been here about 9 months now. So just to talk a little bit about the capability building. So we know that some of the older cases are the more complex journeys, and we've been working on how we build the capability of our staff in those areas. Over the last 8 months, we've upskilled all of our existing workforce so that every member of staff can examine a grant of probate application, and that's from both professional and citizen users. And what that's also helped with is answering those queries through email, answering those phone calls, and being able to give, really valuable updates when people contact us. We've also upskilled teams of staff in the attorney applications and letters of administration with a will, and trained a team of staff in affidavits, which will really help the existing team progress in those cases. Training on the more complex areas of probate can take a bit longer than we would like, and that's because we need to release the experienced staff to support with delivering that training, but also supporting the embedding period and when people are working on the live work, and most importantly, assessing the quality to ensure that we have staff that are competent and confident when working on these cases independently. To support this, we've stood up a team of subject matter experts, and that consists of many registry staff with years and years of valuable experience in those complex cases. They'll be supporting the next stage of our capability building over the next few months, which includes lost will applications, trust courts, and extended intestacy journeys, which are beyond spouse and child. Beyond that, we're planning for foreign domicile and minority interest cases, which we recognise are two of the more complex journeys. We do, Janine and Adam have both said, we recognise that the delays in those cases can be frustrating, and we do want to support further and as best we can. We are in the final stages of planning some virtual surgeries, which will be opportunities for you to book an appointment to speak to some of our more experienced staff, and we would have a registrar there to support that as well. The purpose of these surgeries are to look at those applications that may be seen as outliers, maybe stuck in the system, where more support is needed from both sides to progress that case and ultimately result in the grant being issued where possible. So we'll be launching these shortly. In the first instance, we're looking at whether we isolate them to specific journeys just to ensure that we're being fair in prioritising the oldest cases. But we hope that those surgeries will be well received, and if they work well, we'll continue to do them regularly. And I'll share some more information as soon as we can, but we're hoping to do those as soon as possible. Just lastly, and very quickly on quality, because obviously quantity and quality comes as a pair. We do actively monitor the quality of our work, and we're very quick to react where we do recognise some failure. And an example of that is the stopped applications, where they may have been stopped in error or not all stops identified at the first examination. And we have made significant improvements in that area over the last 8 months, and we do continue to monitor that to ensure it continues. Currently, less than 2% of our grants are subject to reissue, and this has been consistent month on month. So we're really happy that the quality hasn't slipped, and that 2% includes both official and customer error. Hopefully that helps with some insight into the next steps and the constant upskilling and building of capability in our teams, just to show that we are looking at all areas, and hopefully that gives you some reassurance. And I think I'm going to hand back to Adam now.
No, I think it's Mr. Burgess.
Yeah, it's me. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Stephen Burgess. I'm the service manager for probate and support Mel and Janine and the operational team, but also all stakeholders within probate, so probate practitioners, citizens, charitable members. So it's my job to listen to what's needed and then try and deliver that to support the service. I just realised that that's not the right screen. Okay, yeah, it's just labeled wrong. So what did we deliver in 2023 as a service team? So one of the things that you will have noticed recently, and I think I've seen a question in the chat about this, is the scanning of probate practitioner cases now. So we were using a significant amount of resource to enter those paper cases that were sent in to Newcastle. So we've worked with our scanning provider to now ensure that they're all scanned onto the system. So that saves Janine and Mel that resource, which can then be reallocated onto case examination and other admin processes that we have. I think someone in the chat asked what's the time frame for that. So we have an SLA, so service level agreement, to scan those cases within 48 hours. And what that means is you should receive a notification within that period of that your case is being received and it's on our system. One important part for that, where that does fall down, if there is parts of the application form that aren't complete, so we have mandatory fields, it won't create on our system, and it goes into a queue for us to go in and check that and to see why it's failed. And that does take us a little bit longer. So I think the time scale on that's around about a week. So it's really important when you're completing that form that all the information is complete, and particularly there's no pages missing. If there's a section in the form that you think, oh, I don't need that, please include it, because it does reject it when it's scanned. So send the complete form to us with all that information. We delivered a new process for IHT 400 applications, which I'll get onto in a minute, but we were talking about stops, and that was our biggest stop reason in 2022 and 2023, but I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. We've also worked and listened to feedback from our support officers around the case management system. How can we make them more efficient? So we've been able to bring in new filtering of how they can get to cases more quickly, being able to remove steps from the process, so overall saving processing time and making them more efficient. So more efficient they are, grant outputs can go up, and I think we've seen those improvements, along with the work that Mel and Janine have done, start to produce that, particularly in the last quarter of 2023. Also, a big piece of work that we've been working on, I know it doesn't affect probate practitioners directly, but very similar to how you have your My HMCTS dashboard, we didn't have something similar to that for citizens, so they weren't able to self-serve and see where their application was. So which drives contact through emails and telephone calls, so for the operational teams. So we've been able to create that citizen hub now, where once they've submitted their application, they can go and they can self-serve. So again, reduces contact, so which supports the operational team to reallocate those resources and increase those outputs, and hopefully decrease timeliness. So I'll talk about the inheritance tax process, because I know that was a big change for us, and we talked about it a lot last year, and what were the drivers for change for that. So in 2022 and 2023, the biggest reason for us stopping an application was there was further information required when there was an IHT 400, and particularly the IHT 421 form coming back. So 2023, 14,000 applications were stopped because of this, and 9,000 of those were from probate practitioners. Multiple reasons. One, the application was submitted too soon. That was the main one. And then there were sort of admin processes between us and HMRC, whether the documents had been uploaded to SharePoint, etc. So that was a massive driver for us to say, well, we're stopping 14,000 applications. What can we do? So also part of that was that the gross and net figures on that IHT 421 didn't always match what was provided in the legal statement. So then there was more admin time taken for us to go in, check that, go in, amend it. So only, a minute or so, but, all those minutes seem to add up. So we looked at the process, used our user-centered design team to come up with a solution with HMRC, and replace the IHT 421. They've done that now by you submit your IHT 400, and HMRC will provide a code and the figures that are needed before submitting probate. I think we've had about 1,000 applications come through with this code so far. We're close contact still with HMRC, and the process seems to be working on their end. We have had feedback, so I know we've spoken to STEP and some of the other representatives in the sector about process changes, but just want to take the opportunity to remember that during COVID, we brought in the opportunity to be able to you to sign that legal statement on behalf of your clients. So I know some of the feedback we've had that, there's now a delay of you can't produce the legal statement and then you're having to send it to them before to get them to sign to send it back. I know some of the representatives from STEP have said that, well, what we do now is we email that to them, they email it straight back, we sign it on their behalf. So it's sort of counteracting that delay if we're doing that pure paper process. But I think we could see the driver, for us really is those 14,000 applications that we know it takes us almost double the amount of time to deal with a stop case and the delay that goes to yourself. So we're confident and really hoping that we see real benefits from this change as we progress, and we will keep updated on this throughout the year as we see those cases come through and start to be issued. So we talked about applications right first time. I think Adam mentioned it. And the main reason 2023, like I said, was the IT, but the other ones, I think if we can see the figures across here, it's like 13,500 cases have been stopped because of these reasons. So, and some of them are easier to tackle than others. So the first one being that all documents are supplied, and that could be an original will, it could be any of the other supporting documents. So it was over 6,000 of those. So we would just ask that, when you're submitting these applications, there are prompts within the service, and particularly at the end it says, please send these documents. If you could use those prompts, make sure we've got everything that we need. Once we've got that, we should we won't need to be stopped these. I will say that this is figures for probate practitioners and citizens. We've then got applications not accounting for all of the executors. I think we've talked about this previously, that it's important to mention that if there is an executor, even if they've predeceased, we need to know about that. So we need to know why an executor named in the will isn't applying. So there's questions on the digital application about that, and then similarly on the paper forms there are questions for that. So please take care on identifying the executors and make sure that they're all mentioned within the application. Third one, which was to do with more information around the execution of the will. So that could be that there are two dates on the will, the attestation clause is faulty, it could be something to do with the testator's signature or the witness's signatures. So just to remember that when you're examining the will, to make sure that it's all correct, if there is anything that doesn't tick all the boxes of the Wills Act, please provide us with that affidavit evidence or a statement of truth included as to the reason for the discrepancy. Why was it crossed out? When was it done? Anything that you can provide us, to help us stop them. And then also interestingly around the IHT was the figures being incorrect, and I think this refers more to when it's an accepted estate. So making sure we've got those figures for IHT, but also the figures for probate, and if there are any discrepancies between those, that would be great. Just wanted to go back to a point that Janine mentioned. I know on the last webinar that we did, you mentioned about could we upload emails that were sent to Newcastle, and that's something we did work on that. So that was an idea that came from one of these sessions. We took that away, went back to our teams and spoke to them, and we now automatically upload those. So I think so far, I think over 6,000 emails have been uploaded to cases. So that means when you are contacting us now, that all that information is on the case. And I think the figures that I've seen, I think it's within a few days that those emails are up there now. So we're really up to date on those emails on the cases. So again, if there are any ideas that come from this session, please put them in the group. We will listen to that feedback. My team have a dedicated feedback inbox, which is probatefeedback@justice.gov.uk. So if there are any ideas for improvement, please pass those in. It's like I say, we do listen to them. We do try and act on them if we can. So looking forward to 2024. What we've got planned. So this is on our roadmap, which is in the process of being agreed at the moment. So the main focus for us, and there are lots of other smaller pieces of work that go on in the background. So we're looking at that citizen hub again. So what can we do to further improve that? And that's around communications, because the first hub that we released was an MVP, a minimal viable product. It's like, what can we do to enhance that now? But there are also things within that piece that we will do with the HMCTS dashboard, particularly around communicating. Can we communicate directly through the dashboard? Can we upload documents? And we're also looking at, what can we do around actual documents? Can they be uploaded at the point of submission, etc. Those paper cases that you are having to submit to Newcastle and then scanned, we're looking at surfacing those on the HMCTS dashboard. I know that's something we've talked about previously, and it fell down the priorities, but that's something that we're in a good place with that now, and we're ready to take that forward. So that will mean you will have a view of all your cases, whether submitted digitally or on paper, on your dashboard. So you'll be able to go in, see what's on there, what progress are being made, any notes. You'll be able to access documents. So on the grant issues, you'll be able to download from there. We're looking at what we can do to support operational colleagues again, by improving the internal systems to manage those more complex applications. And that's just by introducing certain flags on cases. So when a case comes in, we can make sure that goes to the right people. It's got a reason attached to it why it's in that queue. So that's the bit that's missing at the moment. We have a queue of these more complex, but we want to be able to give our support officers more options to be able to filter the particular types of cases that they've been skilled towards. So rather than go into a case, I can't do that one, go to another case, it's just given more options to be able to select the correct work. And then finally, we're hoping to start the project on expanding intestacy journey this year. So that will open up probably about another 15% of digital cases. So I think we've seen the digital uptake rate was around 80% at the moment. So we think it's going to take us to that 95% mark, which again means I think it's about another 15 to 25,000 digital applications, which we know we can process much more quickly. And so, we'll support operational colleagues, and, you will see the benefits of.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Steve, and Mel and Janine. And thank you once again, everyone has taken the time to join us to hear this update. We have been busily looking at the questions that have been asked in the chat, and so we're now going to try and respond to as many of them as possible. So just because you've just finished speaking, Steve, I thought you were in a flow, so I thought I'd come to you. There was just quite a few questions about the new IHT process and the requirement for legal statements, and why exactly we're doing this change. So would you mind just sort of trying to recover that a little bit more for us, please?
Yep. So like I say, our main driver for this was the significant amount. So I think in 2022 it was 16,000 applications, and in 2023 there was 14,000 applications stopped incorrectly. So what we wanted to do was to ensure that when the application comes to us, we are 100% that it's being dealt with by HMRC, and that those figures that they provided are the correct figures. So again, stops that admin process for us. I think we've seen the feedback around that. Practitioners like to be able to get that legal statement and the IHT 400 done at the same time, so they could send it to the client. But what we wanted to ensure that that legal statement is done, that all the information is correct. So that's the process is in that way. I think that the feedback we've had is that, well, because of that delay, what we've been able to remind, and when we spoke to STEP and other representatives and feedback that we've had from practitioners who think it's working, is that, well, actually what they've been able to do is, once they've got the code, prepare the legal statement that same day, email that out to their clients, get the email back, sign it on their behalf, and then it's ready to submit. Like I say, 14,000 cases going through right first time is a massive benefit for us, but you should also really see benefits for yourself and your clients.
Thanks, Steve. So just to give you a bit of a break, I'm going to go to Mel and Janine. So first question, really well, there's a group of questions really about Newcastle, and I think Newcastle is a proxy for paper applications from reading the comments. So there's some about, you know, when cases have reached the 16 weeks and people aren't getting a response about what's happening with that case and they can't seem to talk to anyone. The cases aren't available to view that go to Newcastle, so no one knows what stage they're at. I think Steve has partly covered that. And then about if we send trust corporation applications to Newcastle, is that classed as a stop? So if I start with you, Janine, and I'm sure Mel will come in and add anything more, is that okay?
Yeah, sure, because I'm probably not going to be able to answer the more technical questions. I think in terms of Newcastle, I think we've recognised throughout everything that we've said to you today is we know that that's where our biggest priority is now. We know that those paper cases are our oldest cases, and we know that the service that we have been providing has not been where we need it to be. So that is absolutely our focus now, and that's why we want to set up these surgeries that we talked about and give you a really clear avenue to come and talk to us about case specifics. So that's coming. What I would say is any case that is more than 20 weeks old, if you're not getting a response through the normal routes, then come to us and we will help unblock that. We've recently done this work to improve our email management, as we've talked about, but that is relatively recent. So you're probably not seeing the results of that yet or the benefits of that yet. So it's all work in progress, but we do recognise the problem, and we'll continue to sort of work with you to get those cases through the system. Mel, I don't know, can you pick up the Trust Corp one?
Yeah, so any cases that we call them handed off, they're handed off to people with the expertise and skills in those areas. So they're not classed as stop, they're workable cases, but they are effectively in a queue waiting for the next person to pick it up. And you know, just as Janina said, these are the sort of cases we're conscious of. We need to build the capability and also prime for those surgeries to try and push those forward, especially if they're the older cases.
Thanks very much, both. I was busy looking for an answer for another question there. So just to share the burden, I'm going to answer two of the questions. So the question in there was, can we publish statistics on the waiting times for solicitors versus citizens? And is there a difference in that waiting time? So this is something that I've asked in the past from our statisticians, and the guidance from them is that it might be quite difficult to do that because they could be taken out of context. So the reason we say that is that obviously on the whole, people tend to use solicitors when things are slightly more complex. And so therefore they might have a more involved process and more likely to need to, for example, go to a registrar for an order to be made, and that they will take longer. And so you could look at the statistics and see that solicitors are taking longer and draw a conclusion, therefore, that why should I use a solicitor? It's much quicker if I do it on my own. And so obviously we know that that's not an accurate conclusion to draw, because as what I've said, there's a different case mix about the types of applications people go for on their own and think this is a simple estate, I can do this, or they might go for some support from a professional to do something that's more unusual, you know, the foreign domicile type things. So on that context, we don't publish information on that. What I can say is there is a difference, not so much on the digital front. So the digital front, it's within about 2 weeks, so it sort of moves around that figure. But on the paper one, there is, but that's because we obviously have a lot more prominence of legal professionals using the paper channel, because that's where the more complex applications are that can't be done online. So the waiting time there, it is longer if you're a solicitor application, but I think there are reasons for that rather than anything else. So hopefully that answers that question. Just going on to some more other questions. if we go to you, Steve, the question here is, I said earlier that 7 weeks isn't where we want it to be for sort of applications which aren't stopped. If 7 weeks isn't the figure, what is the figure we should be aiming for?
That's a good question. So we think it's around about between 4 to 6 weeks, which we were previously. Under previous systems, that our head of work was usually around about 4 weeks that we were working towards. I know there was cases that were issued quicker than that. And again, I know under this system, there will be cases that will be issued quicker than that, but the average that we'd be aiming for would be somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks.
Thanks, Steve. And another one for you, just while we're with you. Paper applications. I said that the combined waiting time is 12.5 weeks for digital and paper. So the question does say if the waiting time is 12.5 weeks, that's not quite what I meant. I think the combined waiting time is slightly higher than that. But if it's not stopped, it is 12 weeks for paper. But the question really says, does that include the time it takes for the application to get scanned on? And if it does, how long is that taking?
Yeah, it does. It does include the time it gets scanned on. So like you say, our SLA to scan everything on is within 48 hours. And even when I mentioned when I was talking that if that when it's scanned, it fails the initial case creation, it goes into what we call our exceptions queue. When we create it, it goes from the point that it was scanned. So it's always within that 48-hour window of when the case is created. That is that date that we work to.
Thanks very much, Steve. So one of the comments here for you, Janine, really is we someone's said that they've seen the increase in output in November and December. That feels to them like that has tailed off in the last 2 months. Is that accurate? And would you like to comment on it a bit more?
Thanks, Adam. So I would say we had a difficult start to January. I think we had some sickness at the very start of January that made our performance dip at the very start of the month, but we actually recovered really well and we ended with a really strong month. And I'm satisfied that February was equally as strong. So I think, as I said earlier, we are consistently seeing a level of performance that gives me assurance that we're making progress.
Thanks very much. So,
Thanks,
Mel, there's a question here about if someone, it'd be helpful if when you're on the phone talking about a case, they could, and you get cut off, that person could ring back and chase that person up, because it's very frustrating when they've been on the phone for a long time and something happens. Are we able to do that?
Yeah,
so
completely agree. And that is what we should be doing. So if that's not happening, I picked that question up. So I'll definitely take that away with the team. But it's certainly within all the guidance and the scripts that we should be calling back to complete that call. So apologies if that hasn't happened, but I'll take it away.
Thanks very much, Mel. Sorry, Steve, there's some more questions for you. I think it centres around really the Citizen Hub. Or it might be about a legal professional, but the question is, could people not have a link to our case management system to see the progress of a case, so they don't have to phone up and check the progress?
Yeah, so we've got that available. So I did see that question and I was hoping to get asked that. Yeah, so you should have that. The only type of case that you haven't got that for at the moment is the paper cases, which I mentioned that we are looking to do that sort of this sort of next periods of project time that we're looking at. But if for your digital cases, for probate practitioners, you log into your HMCTS dashboard and you should be able to see all your cases there. And similarly for citizens, they've got that same one. They create an account on gov.uk. Every time they log back in, they get a dashboard, which a bit like your Amazon delivery, says it's out for delivery, it's being received. We've got a sort of progression bar and some text that goes with that. So yeah, that should be there. Unfortunately, it's not there at the moment with paper cases, and yeah, we can't share a link to that because it is actually, it would be our case management system, and the security around that. The view through my HMCTS dashboard is a restricted view, which is signed off for clearance.
Thanks very much. So, Mel, there's a few questions here, some referring to trust corporations, but some just general. What do people do if their case has been over 20 weeks and nothing's happened on it? What should they do?
Okay, so I've just been pondering this actually behind the scenes, because it seems there's a few questions about those over 20 weeks, and I do think those surgeries will really help with those cases. I think if the case is an absolute outlier, you're having no joy with any case, I'm happy to provide an email address at the end of this session in the chat for you to make direct contact, and we'll look at that. Just very conscious of, we're working the oldest first, and I want to make sure we're being fair to everybody. But if you can leave it with me, I'll provide a contact address for those cases.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
I guess just sticking with you, Mel, if that's okay, can we give some reassurance about the training that the workforce are having and sort of the checks that are made? They're finding some applications being stopped because wrong queries essentially being raised. So is there anything more you can say on that for us?
Yeah, so we do have a really good training program within the probate service. So generally a new starter will have an 8-week program. Sometimes we have to be agile and change that, and we do that. It's been very successful. What we do ensure, and I touched on it earlier, is that we have the quality there before people are signed off. So we do have a quality assessment period where people have completed their training, they've had some consolidation, generally for 3 to 4 weeks, and then they have that independent time, but it goes into a quality check where an experienced examiner checks that. So I am confident that we have a really good training program, and it works well. Of course, there is always going to be some element of error, and especially with training lots of new people, which is why we've implemented that subject matter expert team, who are also focusing a lot on the quality, so they're getting the feedback. So when you contact us, whether it's by phone or by email, and there has been an error, we do collate that information, we look for trends, and we do pick up with individuals, and if that is consistent with that individual, we put them back through a training program. So I am confident there will always be some element of error, but we'll continue to monitor it to make sure that that continues.
Thanks very much. Couple for you, Steve, if that's okay. First one, someone said two-sided scanning problem solved, question mark.
I think that was raised on the last webinar, so it came up. So I think people had queries where a case had been stopped because a page of a will would be missing. We constantly feedback to our scanning provider, and that's on a daily process with our support officers. If something's not right, we have an escalation process with them. So I would hope that you have seen some improvement, because we are constantly feeding that back to them. So yeah, confidence, but like every process, there will be failures within that. I think because some of them are an automated scanning process and some of them are manual. So if someone turns a page incorrectly, there could be that. But yeah, as far as I know, the double-sided issue has been resolved.
Thanks very much. And then just back to the IHT question. Someone's asked, can we confirm if the IHT 421 is now obsolete? IHT 400 still seems to ask for this to be included.
Yeah, the IHT 421 is obsolete now. So when you're submitting the IHT 400, don't worry about the IHT 421. HMRC will do that side of the process, and then they will send you back the information that you would have needed from the IHT 421. So the gross figure and the net figure. So Adam, can just add, I think someone's asked a follow-up question on about the legal statements, and there being spaces for the clients and yourselves to sign that. Yeah, I am confirming that you can be the only person to sign that. We will accept that as long as it's signed by you as the probate practitioner. There's no need for your client to sign that. We will accept it with just your signature on.
Thanks very much. So we're almost out of time. So last question I'm going to give to Mel, if that's okay. Mel, you've got the honour. And so it was just about the process for when we get the answer back on stopped cases. Does it go to the back of the queue, as in all probate applications, or how do we then prioritise that response?
Okay, so it doesn't go to the back of the queue. For digital applications, we're in a really good place with that stopped evidence, as we touched on before. We're picking up the evidence from the previous week. For paper, they will be taking a bit longer for all the reasons we've said. Definitely doesn't go to the back of the queue. We constantly rotate the new applications and the stopped applications to make sure we're keeping them aligned and working those oldest. So effectively, once we get that evidence back, it moves to the top of the queue. So we work from that order. Again, as I said before, if these are outliers that you're finding you're getting no progress with, when we provide the email address shortly, I'm happy for you to share those case references and we can look at those.
Thanks very much. And I guess just worth reiterating, there is, it doesn't go to the back of the queue, but there is still a queue.
Yeah.
And so because of the with volume that do get stopped, that creates its own queue system. You're not going back to a new probate application, but there is a queue for dealing with the evidence that comes back in, unfortunately, at the moment. So at that point, I'm just going to double check that there's no more questions that have come in that I've missed. There is not. Oh, sorry,
I was
Steve,
just say,
you've
Adam,
noticed
there's
one?
just one quick one. I think someone mentioned around cases handed off to the specialist team and what is the marker for flagging these up, because I think they trust corporations again. So there is a marker on the application form and also on the digital journey that if you're selecting a trust corporation, it will get moved into that specialist queue. So it's an automatic process, and then if it doesn't trigger on that, a caseworker can actually do that. So trust corporations was a big release that we did in 2021, so that should be happening automatically. So if whoever posted that has got a specific example, contact probate feedback at justice, and I'll investigate that to see if something's not working as it should be.
Thanks very much. And one last question has just sneaked in, and it's definitely going to have to be the last question. But is there a way of getting HMRC to disclose that code over the phone rather than having to wait for the letter?
I can confidently answer that one because we've had that one. We did the Trust and Estates group with HMRC and probate practitioners just a couple of weeks ago, and the answer is unfortunately no at the moment for that. The reason they've stated for that, with it being such a long code, is chances for error within that. So yeah, they're sticking to that process. So once you call them, they will then provide that letter again.
Thanks very much. So massive thanks to the team behind the scenes that have put this on for us, and thanks to Janine, Mel, and Stephen for presenting and answering all the difficult questions. I really hope everyone's found it useful. We do these periodically, so we will do another one in the future. And as Janine said, we really feel that we are on the road to recovery now, and we're really grateful for everyone's continued support and patience with us. I know it's not easy at times, but we are on that road, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the published stats every month now, rather than sort of not looking forward to that, because the figures are good and they're going to stay good until we get this back on track. So thank you again for the time, and I hope to speak to you soon.